Hi, Lawrence.
Hey, how are you, Romit?
Good, good. Hear you loud and clear. You're good.
Yeah, you can
Visible.
hear me?
Yeah, yeah, perfect.
Oh, good,
Mm,
good, good.
Super. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, guys, can you hear
Super.
us? Can everyone out there hear us as well? Super, yeah. So I got a thumbs up on that. So, Lawrence, good to have you. We're gonna start this in about 3 more minutes because we'll give them another till 7 o'clock.
Sure.
But good to see you. Yeah, good.
Nice to
All
see you.
good.
And staying safe, staying busy at home.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. Us busy at home is always sounds good.
Well, just whatever my wife makes me do. That's the only busy
So
thing I do.
you're keeping
You know,
everything speaking span, I believe.
I think that's my job now. My job has changed,
Yeah.
and it's all in.
So which part of Pune are you in? Where are you staying? Close to the club?
Uh, no, I stay in Balawadi. So
Oh, Balwadi, yeah.
just off the Banner Road.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
yeah, so it's not too far. It's like 20 minutes away, so it's
All
nice to
right,
come
that's good.
down and
Super.
plenty of
That's good.
restaurants and things. Where are you based,
Delhi,
Romit?
Delhi.
In
Heart of
in the
town.
Oh, right, okay.
It's yeah, heart of town. Yeah, it's a club called Kutub Golf Club, which is a public facility, as well as
Right.
a driving range called Siri Fort.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
nice. So
Yeah.
the Kutub Golf Club now is it's building a new academy, which is a double tier, just to accommodate a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good
So
to
that's
hear.
yeah, that's pretty good.
And
I've got a lot of messages coming in. I don't know.
oh,
Sorry.
really? Is there something? No, please.
When the messages come, can you see the messages coming down as well? No,
I
or is
think,
that
yeah,
coming
I
on
can.
only on my phone?
I can
Oh, you can?
see people joining. I think I can see
Oh,
people
those ones.
joining.
Yeah. Okay, super.
Katya has just said, "Hey, hi Katya. Hope you're safe in
Okay, there you
Switzerland."
go.
Yeah, I can see who's joined. Oh, Vanny's in. Hey, Vanny. Oh, yeah,
There
there's
you
a
go.
few
Your
in there.
students are on. Yeah.
Oh, you guys will have heard most of this already. You guys. So yeah, they're all in. Oh yeah, they're in. So are you from Delhi originally as well, or?
Delhi, originally Calcutta, but I moved to Delhi in
Oh, okay.
1999. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's right at the beginning. So I don't think they had anything called a junior program at that time when I came in. So that was the first junior program, I think, 98, 99.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
What
was
was it?
playing till then, or on and off.
Yeah.
And what about
Yeah, because
yourself?
I
Yeah.
yeah.
What about yourself?
Oh,
Let's
so I
we
mean,
can start and you give us something about yourself.
yeah, I mean, I grew up in Bahrain, so one of the Gulf islands. My
Wow.
dad's from the UK and my mum's from Indonesia. So he was always traveling around, and I think we were in Pakistan as well for a little bit for 2 years. And that's actually where I learned my golf was actually in Karachi as a 7, 8 year old. I
Which
can
golf club?
remember. Oh, it wasn't a golf club. I was 8 at the time. So we had this big lawn, and
Oh,
my
okay.
dad used to get the bar stool out, and I remember he had these ping clubs that were way too long, and I remember hitting balls kind of on top of this bar stool and knocking it over to the neighbor's garden party and things like that. So that was my first kind of introduction to golf actually was through
Wow.
my dad. And then we moved to Bahrain, and then I started playing golf actually on a sand golf course. So I never saw grass. I never played on grass until I was like 15. So the sand golf courses are just literally like dried up drought sand that you find in the desert. The ones that crack up, and then they have
Yeah,
like
yeah.
these black tar lines that separate off the fairway to the rough, and then the greens
Right,
are
right, right.
are basically like tarmac, right? And then they would add like a layer of oiled sand
Oil,
that you could smooth over.
oil,
Yeah,
oil sand.
yeah, like oil and
Yeah,
sand
that's right.
mixture. And
Yeah,
then you used to carry
Browns.
around, yeah, browns. That's it. Yeah. So they used to sweep the browns, and then we'd carry this AstroTurf with
Yeah,
us. So if you were in the fairway, you
that's
could
right.
use it. And then if you were in the rough,
Wow.
it was like boulders and rocks, you know. And I can remember everyone used to have a rough club. So, you know, you'd have your pristine set, and then you'd have like a 7-iron or an 8-iron, which was the damage club that you could knock out the rough. So, I basically learned my golf there, and you know, I got down to like scratch, and then played grass, and obviously I had to readjust the grass. Played the the England Under-16s Open, and it was on like a links course, place called Fairhaven, near Royal Lytham, and I just remember like first time on grass, and it was links, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so ill prepared for this, you know, like going off sand course and then trying to play. So then readjusting, and then I turned pro when I was 18, tried to make it, and then failed miserably, got a back injury as a result as well. And then I went off to university after. And, you know, my dad was always like, hey, you've got to have a backup plan. You know, you're 19 and a half years old now. You've got to go off and you've got to do something. And I went to the University of Bristol originally to do e-commerce and digital banking. And I lasted like 4 months. And I said to my dad, you know, I want something to do with golf. I can't do this. I don't see myself, you know, working in finance, right? So I then took another year off and tried playing again. And then this course came up through the University of Birmingham.
Yeah, I know about that course.
Yeah, so the Applied Golf Management course. And, you know, I thought, you know what, I may as well kind of give it a go, because you could do your PGA alongside doing your bachelor's degree. And at the time it was, I think I was the second class to go in, and they were only having 25 people in each year. And to be honest with you, I never thought I'd get in, because, you know, with golf, yes, I would have got in with my handicap at the time, my playing experience. But with my academics, you know, they were like looking for like 4 straight A levels, and I was like 2 A levels short. That's the kind of what I'm going to say in public. But academically, I was never very good. But I was surprised, you know, and they got me in, and you know, I did that for 3 years and loved every minute of it. And then 2006, when I graduated, IMG and Ledbetter kind of gave me a call and said, hey, you know, we've heard a few things about you, and how would you like to teach for David? And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And then, you know, 14 years on, I'm still with the group, you know, so it's been like that really since then.
Super, Lawrence, and that must have taken you, like you mentioned, it must have taken you all across the world as well with the Ledbetter Academies. Where all have you been? Yeah,
so my first kind of location was in Austria. So that was where they send kind of the newbies. IMG would send us to Austria. And it's actually the same club that Bernd Wiesberger is from. So it's a place called Bad Tatzmannsdorf, and it's in a beautiful part of Austria. And, you know, they always use that as like a training ground, because you would have to teach what's called Platzreifers. So people in Germany and Austria, they have to, when they first start playing golf, they have to undertake what's called like a golf license, which you may or may not know, right? So
for the
within
test,
like for the test, exactly, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so like you can imagine, you know, you've got 5 days, and they've got to go around like this 9-hole track and a certain number of shots to get the card, you know, and
the license to play.
Sometimes, license to play, and like if you know Austria, you know Austria, they're all skiers. There's not that much kind of racket ball or anything to do with club and ball. It's mostly like skiing. So you ask them, well, what sports do you play? Oh, cross-country skiing. Oh, okay. So, you know, we'd have groups of, you know, like 10 or 12 people in a class for like 5 days. And literally, you'd have all the different kind of coordinations and the different type of kind of physical abilities come through. And it was a great learning curve, you know, because you know, I didn't speak that much German, and they obviously didn't speak that much English, and you're trying to teach them the game of golf, right? And it's frustrating. You got 5 days, and there's constraints put in. So you know, so we did that for 1 season, and then they moved us to IMG Bradenton, when it was Ledbetter
Florida.
Yeah, so I was kind of in between those two places. So you know, it's such a big contrast, and I think that's kind of what's influenced me a little bit is going from teaching kind of pure out beginners who have no concept of the game, and then going to IMG, and you've got, you know, all these talented kind of juniors around you. You know, so at the time, like, you know, Nelly Corder was like a little 7-year-old,
Wow.
and you know, Jessica was 15 at the time. You could see them hitting balls on the range, and Paula would drop by. So you had a cool kind of elite mix over there. So so we'd spend time teaching over there, and then we'd go back to Austria and do that. And then obviously Spain, I set up kind of our academies, our 3 academies in Spain, and I was there for probably a good 7.5 years before moving to India.
Wow, so you've picked up a lot of stuff and the variety of people that you've been through. That's exciting because it's a small time, but you picked up a lot of experience, I guess. And
I mean, I'm actually 18 years old, but I look 40 nearly.
you look really young. I mean, look at me, look at the color.
No, I always joke. It's always you know, it's always stressful. But I think one of the things I've kind of enjoyed is everywhere I've been, you know, you've got so many lessons always booked in, and so you know, you just get better and better just from doing tons of lessons, don't you? You know, I'm sure.
I've heard that. No, I've heard that.
Really?
And I've heard I've heard that, and like Lawrence is available maybe 3 months from now.
Yeah, and that's no word of a lie. You know,
on a Friday at 4:00.
Yeah, honestly, it
that's
kind of
like specific.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gets like that, and you know, it's 6 days a week that I do at Oxford, and you know, and it's always very flattering to me, you know, to have that much people have that much kind of want to come and see you, because it's a huge expense, you know, and I'm always grateful. You know, like even to this day, I'm always grateful. Oh wow, he wants a lesson, and I'm like so grateful to have that opportunity, you know, to teach them. And I'm never like, oh my God, I got to teach such and such. It's always like it always gives me like tingles whenever someone new comes in and says, oh, I'd love to have a lesson. And it's always a great privilege, you know, most of the time. Yeah.
But super, I believe that you're doing a lot of good things, and it's a great facility
Oh,
from
thank
what
you.
I've heard. Yeah. And someone like you to be there. I mean, Anil is a very close friend of mine. He's a very, very good buddy of mine. And
yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy. And, you know, he took me for a drive out there just before he was building it, or he was in the process of building it. And it looked like a fantastic facility. And what I've heard of it, it's something phenomenal in Pune. And next time around, I have one of my events. I'm definitely going to come visit you at that facility.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've been hearing great stuff about you as well, Romit. You know, with the US Kids tour as well that you've been doing. A lot of my juniors have been coming back saying, "Oh, it's you know, it's a really great addition to like the tournament calendar, which is what juniors need. You know, over here is a lot more competitions."
Yeah, I believe, you know, juniors groomed the right way will always produce the right results. And if juniors are not groomed the right way, we will not produce those results. And so I put in my effort to get them used to the best facilities and practices out there, because that's exactly what they require. They need the best conditions, they need the best the equipment out there, they need the best mental coaches, they need the best coaching, they need the best know-how. You know, so sharing knowledge with them, and India is a little bit knowledge starved. So when I find myself in a position where I can actually filter that knowledge and bring to them what is the best out there and the most authentic knowledge out there. And that's my search. It's always been a search for a golfer. You know how it is. You know, we look for the secrets everywhere, and we later gone about 20 years down the line, like, oh God, I actually listened to the wrong thing. You know? So my thing is now always been for a while now to always find the correct information, and that is what I want to always decimate and tell my students. And I've been lucky and fortunate enough that well, there's a lot of hard work behind it, as you know, but definitely I've been blessed with great students who've done well for themselves. You know, and that's the true thing. I mean, I'm very grateful to those guys who I have been able to put my knowledge into and share the knowledge with. And at the end of the day, it's the student, it's the player who's the king, who's the star. and
Absolutely.
I'm glad to play my part just like you have. But what I
Yeah.
want to know from you that in a very short time, what you've done in India is you've been here what 2 years?
It's three,
Three,
yeah, 3 years,
3 years.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I know. Tom met me on the way to go give your trackman to you
Oh,
in
Tom,
Pune.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Tom's a
like,
friend. So
that must have been like
yeah,
November 2016, I think. Yeah, when he was in.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that was an exciting trip for Tom, if you know what I mean. When
Yeah.
he landed
Oh, he
in
never
Bombay.
stressed. But he's yeah. He looks very stressed. I don't know if Tom's there, but he looked very stressed when I had a coffee with him after.
That taxi ride from Bombay to Pune was hell.
He didn't expect it, but I'm sure I sent him details of it, and I was like, "Listen, it's a bit of a trek." And he's like, "No, Bumba, it's fine." But no, he's all in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so anyway, so that's when I heard of you in the beginning, and when you were negotiating the Trackman deal. So I used to head
Yes.
Trackman in India at that time. Yeah, that's right. But great thing is that in this short time you've kind of established a great program. So we would like to listen. Guys over here who are joined in or hooked up also want to hear a bit about your program and what you think, what you do, and they think that you do things differently. But I guess that's what you do. But what is it that actually is appealing to a lot of golfers going and visiting you?
Yeah. So I think it's obviously we there's obviously like a little bit of luck involved, right? And
Of course.
like I'm not the smartest person in India when it comes to golf, and I'll happily put my hand up and say that. There are some outstanding coaches from what I've seen. You had Tarun on a few nights ago, who's done amazing things in India, as have you yourself. You got Anitya Chand and Karen Bindra doing great work in Delhi, and I'm probably forgetting some other great coaches as well. But I'm sure that they are smarter than me in certain areas. So I picked up a lot from Tarun just listening to him, and from yourself as well. And I think one of the things that has always kind of like spiked my interest, like whenever I'm coaching or whenever I started off that journey, is as a young coach, we always think just because we've got the certifications, just because, I've graduated from university, I've got my PGA, I've got my leadbetter, I've done this, I've done that. And you think you know everything. And then you come in with such a closed mind as a young coach, right? And I was like that, and I think my experiences of going through that, thinking that, I'm amazing at this, and then having it kind of ripped open by spending time with people that are more intelligent than me, has really kind of like opened my eyes a little bit with coaching. So a great friend of mine is actually a guy called Adam Young. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I've seen his app. I've seen his posts.
Yeah.
I follow him.
So we were at university together, and he's got he's got one of the best-selling books in golf instruction at the minute called The Practice Manual. And
Correct.
when he was writing that, he was actually working for me in Spain whilst we were working together, and he was every night he was writing that stuff down. And Adam and I go back at least 18 years, and I was a very kind of technical coach, and he was very the opposite. He was more discovery orientated, constraints, and very non-technical, although he knew everything about the technique, everything about the biomechanics of it, the science of it. And, we were good friends and we clashed, and I am always skeptical of things, and so when he said, I think we can change them by doing this. And I'm like, no, you can't, because this is how the golf swing is, and you can't do that. This was like 15 years ago. And we had a huge argument in a bowling alley, where drinks were spilt, and
Super.
and then from there we kind of like rebonded, and then it's kind of been like a hybrid. So my kind of philosophy, like I follow everyone. I think in our business, I think that we've got to be able to kind of understand what other people's views are on the golf swing. If we just want to put technique as one part, we've got to understand all the views. So whether it's stack and tilt, whether it's golfing machine, whether it's Mac O'Grady, whether it's single plane, two plane, whatever you want to call it, in our profession, we've got to understand all of it. And we don't generally have to agree with it, but we have to kind of fill our scope up, right? So, you know, in other companies, whether it's like, you know, UPS or FedEx, right? UPS knows what FedEx are doing, you know, logistically, because they're competitors, right? And they want to know what it is. Car manufacturers know exactly what's coming out. For, you know, if I was Mercedes, I know what BMW are going to pull out next year in the sedan model, which is what we're doing. And so everyone's constantly trying to compete with each other, but in the process, they're making the cars better or they're making their companies better. And that's the way I kind of see like golf, you know? So I think one of the things that I love is when students come to me, I don't generally, even though I'm under that Ledbetter umbrella, that Ledbetter banner, you know, they're like, oh, I don't really want a Ledbetter swing. And I'm like, look, I don't even know what a Ledbetter swing is, right? I go off your ball flight. That's all I do, right?
That's right.
And depending on what level you are of efficiency, we can determine how much we actually need to kind of modify or change. So with elite players like, you know, your Chicas, I think Udian's joined, Udian or Carlin or whoever, you know, Abhinav or whoever it is, you know, all these guys have had some form of success, and they've you know, a success at a certain level, right? But they still have to be they still have to be really good at what they're doing to be at that level. Now, to go from that level to take them up to like another level, it may only be this, and it's not really, you know, it may take like a year or 2 years to kind of improve by that much. But in my head, I always have this fear of, you know, it'll only take 1 week to destroy them by this much, right?
True that.
You know,
true.
So, you know, my philosophy going in with like elite players is always like, hey, look, you got to tell me what you want, right? Because you could put your video up of your swing, and we could have 10 golf coaches in, and you'll have like 20 different opinions on what you're doing in the golf swing. So you need to tell me what you want. So whenever I work with elite players, it's always like, before you even come to see me, they'll tell you, like, we go through quite a lengthy interview process where they're messaging me about their history. I want to know, you know, what type of shot you see when you play your best. I want to know when you played your best, what year, why are you in this slump, what's changed in your life, have you changed your diet, is the family okay? All of these holistic things kind of go in. And then once I find out what their issues are with, let's say, their ball flight, we can come up with like a blueprint that is the least intrusive. Because I still want to keep the DNA of those elite players. You know, you should be able to look like in the distance, oh yeah, that's Chica swinging. Yeah, he's got that characteristic. And oh yeah, that's Uday. And, you know, not because he's like a giant, but yeah, that's his swing, you know. Oh, that's Colin, you know, and his neck's like all over, or Dharma, you know. And all these idiosyncratic moves, I think are what makes them. It's just that the fixes for those idiosyncratic moves can't really be found in a model or a textbook, because the model's forever changing based on them, right? Yeah. And then with juniors or people that haven't reached that stage, you know, I tend to have like a little bit more bias when we're talking technically. You know, like I think everyone has like a bias of what they like to see, but everything I do, I try and do it based around kind of their ball flight, like getting the club on the ball in a more consistent manner. You know, whether that's by changing their statics, as you know, I quite like what you said the other day with Tarun, Romit. You know, you've got your statics and your dynamics.
That's right.
And in my head, I always think that, you know, the club face is king, right? So whatever the club face is doing, your body's going to be reacting to it, whether in a great way or in a negative way. You know, so I always check with juniors who haven't reached a certain level. I always check those statics first, and they'll all tell you, like, I'm like, how's your grip? Because everyone's grips are different to match up with them. And then from that, we look at, you know, with lots of juniors, I always look at the synchronization aspects. You know, so you always see them like getting very armsy, and you know, the body's like way ahead, and then there's massive stalls, right? So I always try and figure out like ways around that. So I would say those are like my two approaches when it comes to like the elite players, and then my developing players, and that's only like, I would say probably, you know, 10 or 20% of what I would do, and that's only from a technical perspective of a blueprint.
Right. So that sounds fantastic because I've seen some of the work that you put out there on social media, and it looks a lot of passionate development. It's not it doesn't follow like a book. Each one that you do is from a different era. So that's why when you mention people like Morad, which you said Mac O'Grady, or if you say Ben Doyle, if you say the Hat, you know, these
Yeah,
are all
yeah,
guys who are the best
yeah.
in their careers, and I can see that you've picked up a lot of stuff on the way, and you mix and match everything just to fit. Just it's not that you teach the same grip to everyone, but you do have
Precisely.
the perfect matchups, you know, with their swings,
Well,
and that's
I think you're being too kind because I mess up matchups all the time because I'm forever kind of learning, right? And I'm not afraid to say it, and some of my students will tell you, like, I'm not afraid to say, look, you know what, maybe that isn't the best road. Let's do this, and I mess up like all the time, and I think
everyone does.
yeah.
That's fine.
And but it's amazing because you mentioned Ben Doyle, right? And
That's right.
you mentioned all these wonderful teachers like in the past, and I always think that everyone that you see, nothing is original. We're all learning from people, and I've learned
Of
from my
course.
mentors, Kevin Smeltz, Andrew Nicholson, Stuart Clayton. Oh, he's just popped up, and Stuart is
Yeah, I just saw him up
um,
there.
Stuart's like, one of the best coaches I think I've ever had the pleasure of being taught under, right? And all of these guys, they all possess, a certain characteristic that they bring, right? So whenever I've seen Stuart, for instance, like whenever I've shadowed him, he's so softly spoken and he's so articulate in how he communicates to his students that it almost gives like this amazing sense of security. I'll trust you. I'll trust you, whatever you say, right? And then you see other coaches who are more motivational coaches, and I kind of like picking those different types to kind of suit the student that I have in front of me,
Right.
So when Chico rolls up, he's a little bit more intense, and I get a little bit intense, and I know when to kind of relax a little bit. When Udin shows up, it's like, hey, what are you doing? And we can kind of get into his level of comfort. And then I think when you set that environment up, especially with juniors, and juniors, you've got 4 different learning styles, right? And
Yeah.
everyone learns differently, and everyone has different personalities as well. And so whenever I'm working with juniors, it's really important for me to make sure that they feel comfortable, and I need to know kind of how to push their buttons as well, because I can't get the most out of them if I don't know how to kind of get them to do something,
Which button to press? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so a lot of times, like in India, I find a lot of juniors are very, very respectful, so they're like so intimidated. One of my students, Nyanika, I don't know if she's up there, Nyanika Sangha, she'll hate me for saying this, but, every time she comes to a lesson, she's like silent because she's so nervous, and I've known her I've coached her for 3 years, and she's still really nervous. And I try and kind of like say, hey, chill out. You don't need to, relax a little bit, and then that way she's able to ask questions, right? Because I don't want
Right.
to be a dictator in there. So I think it's basically like being more of a chameleon with most students. Being a chameleon, having like principles that matter, and obviously David Ledbetter has been kind of one of the guys that has influenced me so much with cause and effect, and understanding that if you do this, something else will kind of in turn happen, right? So you can kind of fix one area, find out what the root cause is, and you might find a chain reaction of changes happen, and then Adam Young, being able to kind of get across concepts as opposed to technicals, So
Right.
if ever you've seen like somebody slice the ball, Adam was the one that taught me like, hey, Lawrence, instead of like teaching him like a stronger grip and trying to get his dynamic shift more diagonal in the downswing, why don't you ask him, how do you think you hit a draw? And it's amazing the answers you get. Oh, to hit a draw, well, yeah. So I need the ball to go left, right? So I'll just swing left. And you're like, there it is. That's
Now
the
we know what the
concept.
problem is.
Yeah,
That's right.
now we know what the problem is.
Yeah.
So sometimes people's concepts don't kind of line up with what they're trying to do. So you could forever change their grip and you could forever change their baseline in transition. But if they think to make the ball turn left, they have to swing left, it defeats the purpose, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Right that you mentioned that, because, you know, when I started teaching way back in 98, 99, the first thing that I put myself out there and said that, listen, if I go to learn something from someone, sometimes the teacher thinks that I know it all. I don't know anything. So I have to consider my student as someone who I need to first educate. Like what you said, concept. Maybe the concepts are not there in the first place. Or whatever concepts they had, maybe the issue that they're having the problem. Like they don't know how to draw it because they never knew how to draw it in the first place. And the only thing they know is how to hit it left to right. So,
Exactly.
So sometimes it becomes there.
Yeah, and you know, changes are very difficult. And what one of the things that I see very difficult, especially in junior golf, is you know, it's normal for juniors to kind of go between coaches, right? It's just part of our business, because you know that's everyone's trying to get better, and maybe they want fast results, and so they always want to switch. And what I find detrimental is that, you know, when you've got two different type of philosophies, you know, and one might be right, mine might be right, or whoever's might be right, but you get this kind of like crisscross of philosophies, and the only person that doesn't benefit is the student, because now they're like completely confused, you know. So I try my best whenever that situation arises, like, hey, you know, who was your last coach, and what were you guys working on? And instead of kind of like diminishing that coach, like, why are they saying this? You're like, oh, maybe you didn't understand that bit. I think it might be this bit, and then try and kind of make sure there's no contamination, right, where they're all muddled, and just have them say, yeah, what I'm doing is actually right, but maybe I can do it a little bit better this way.
A little different.
And then you kind of, you know, and then you clear up the water a little bit. And I think that's really important, I think, in junior golf, because you'll always see juniors kind of at a certain age, you know, they might move somewhere else because of convenience, because of change, whatever. But making sure we don't
Muddle
kind
them
of
up,
muddle them up is always like on the back of my mind. Whenever I work with anyone new in there, you know.
That's right. Yeah, we can always suggest them that may try something different. Just maybe this will lead to a more improvement that they've ever had. You know, like, you know, they've had a lot of improvement. Now, maybe a little bit different approach. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
And then
just to make them feel comfortable. Because at a young age.
That's all it is. You know, because I mean, at that age, you know, we're obviously trying to teach the student, not the game, right? And we don't want to leave them traumatic over like golf lessons and golf coaching. So, oh, well, someone told me this, I told this, and I know I got it. Oh my God. And then they end up, you know, not trusting anybody and end up in a very unfair situation, which can be avoided, you know, in that respect. So I always look out for kind of like the well-being of the juniors and trying to get on their wavelength as well. And I think that's, you know, maybe why, you know, a lot of people tend to come over. You know, it's not because I'm the smartest. I want to get that out there. Not because I have the right technique or the right way. I think maybe it's down to being able to kind of, you know, treat each student as one individual, and then trying to make them as comfortable as possible, setting up their blueprints, setting up their processes in what they're trying to do. You know, and then forever just coaching them, you know, improving them 1% in each area is the way forward, I think, for where I've come to anyway. Yeah.
Super. I think that's a great insight into what you've been doing and how you've been doing it and what you find is the right mix, you know, with everything. So there's some questions which came up also, which said, how do you plan your lessons? A little bit more about, you know, you give them a little bit, they'll want more. So that's okay.
Yeah. So I guess, it's Rohan. Is it Rohan?
Rohan, yeah.
Hey, Rohan, how are you?
Manas.
I hope you're fine up there in Ahmedabad, staying safe. Thanks for the question. So the way I would plan my lessons really just depends, you know, on who it is, right? So if it's a new guy that's coming in, maybe an Asian tour guy that's coming in, I'll be planning my session kind of 1 to 2 weeks in advance. So, you know, like with Colin, for instance, when he came in, I was on the phone to Udin asking him, hey, what's Colin's deal? You know, I was asking different players, like, what's Colin like? You know, what's he like as a person? Trying to get to know more about his personality. And then I then kind of asked Colin to tell me on WhatsApp what it is he's looking from me, right? Because I don't want to tell him what I think. I want him to tell me how I can help. So that's my first thing with elite players, is that. And then I'll have a look at his swings with Chica or whoever it is. You know, if they've had a great year in the past, I'll go on YouTube and I'll find out what their swings were like, how their body language was. And I'll do a lot of kind of investigative research before I even see them on the first tee. And then, you know, I then have in my head, like, okay, well, I have a feeling it's going to run along this line. You know, like I already have it in my head of how I think I'm going to portray this, and then I'll watch them hit balls. If it's a junior coming in, pretty much the same process, but I want to know why they're playing golf. You know, I want to know what it is that's making them want to play, want to learn. Because if I know why they're doing it, we can kind of set the levels of what we need to do a little bit better.
Expectations,
you know? Yeah, their expectations, you know. So like if they're coming in, oh, I just love golf. It's like, okay, cool. Let's try and make this session a little bit fun, you know. And if they come in and it's like, yeah, you know, I really want to be the best in the world. So okay, well, tell me how you're going to be the best in the world, you know. And then I'll have them like list out, I need to do this. Okay, well, tell me how, you know, out of 10, tell me what's the weakest area of your game, what's the strongest area of your game. And then we list out that whole process. And sometimes I feel a little bit bad when that happens because, you know, they paid for like 3 hours and we've just used up like 2 hours trying to figure out what it is to do. But I think that's an essential part, you know, because I don't want to make any changes or suggest any changes until I know what it is that they want and how it is we can achieve it, right? So we got to line up all our ducks in a row, and then we proceed. If it's your normal amateur that's coming in, you know, Mr. Singh who plays on a Saturday, Sunday, you know, I know he's not going to practice that much. So it's pretty much like, see him, okay, tell me about it. And it's a much shorter version, less detailed version, you know. Right. But I hope that answers your question, Rohan, in there. And if it's guys and girls that I've taught for a long time, we do it based off tournaments. Right, so how was that last tournament? Send me your stats. Okay, let's try and figure out which areas we need to work on. And most of the time, the lesson plannings, as I said before, once we've set a blueprint for some of these competition juniors or these competition players, the blueprint's already set. We know roughly the tendencies that they have, right? And then when they're out traveling and playing tournaments for 3 or 4 weeks, those tendencies tend to get like really off skewed. So we just go back to that blueprint plan. And then it's repackaging kind of the drills that we've done, but make it a little different so that they don't get too stagnated and that they feel a bit fresh during the session. Hope that helps.
So Rohan wants to expand a bit on that. Mental versus technique. What you prefer and why, maybe?
Sorry, mental as in...
I guess he's talking versus technique. So I guess mental golf, you know, is something I think Rohan, what Rohan's trying to say is the mind over technique. I don't know whether the mind really hits the ball, but the technique definitely does. But Rohan, if you could expand a bit on that, would be easier for us to understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think maybe, are you saying, is it maybe a mental issue or could it be a technical issue? Is that maybe what you're implying? Well, I think they probably both go hand in hand, you know, as I'm sure you'd agree, you know, like if you got something wrong, maybe technically, you're never you can tell yourself, oh, I'm going to hit a great shot. I'm going to hit a great shot.
What happened?
Yeah, but if you know, 8 times out of 10, it's going left and there's OB left, you could be the hippiest person ever and it's not going to stop you hitting it left. Right. So in some areas it is that. But in some areas as well, like, you know, you see people hitting it great on the range and then they're unable to go out on the course. And that's something you hear all the time. And, you know, a lot of times whenever I see that, you know, a lot of my students, you know, they're always, they always say, oh, I hit it great in the practice round, or I hit it great on the practice range. And then when I go into the tournament, it's like a completely different thing. I'm shooting 10 shots over what I normally would. Would I class as mental? Probably, but maybe, I haven't maybe informed them better about how to practice, right? Like maybe they're just practicing in a very safe, comfortable environment. And then as soon as they get out into the tournament, it's like all of a sudden it's uncomfortable. And maybe, they're just not suited to that. So maybe changing up their practice plans to make them feel confident is one area that I see. But I don't know if that's helped, Rohan.
Yeah, I think that explains everything about the mental and the technical side of it, and how they can be mixed up and matched up. Okay, the next one comes in is under par scores are becoming the new normal in juniors, especially in international competition. How can juniors set their goals and improve their personal scores or the tournament results?
Well, I think that's a great thing. I think first and foremost is stop benchmarking yourself, right? If I was a junior, I'd stop benchmarking myself to other juniors, right? Because everyone has different growth spurts. Everyone has then different progression spurts,
right.
So
early bloomers and late bloomers.
Yeah, exactly. And Tarun said it really well. Whoever's number one now probably won't be number one on the PGA Tour, right? Or on PGTI. It doesn't work like that. So I think if you're forever benchmarking yourself against, I remember my dad when I was 16, always saying, oh, Justin Rose was shooting like 2 under, 3 under, when he was your age. And I was like, oh, well, okay, good for Justin Rose, But there are some players, that took up the game at 14 and were shooting 40 over par, Norman, Player, right? And so you just, I wouldn't benchmark myself on that. I think, trying to score lower in the junior game, a little bit like video games, right? We've got to start them on a level that's first of all attainable and reachable. I'm not going to play Tetris and start off on level 20 when this thing is coming down really fast, because there's no enjoyment to it. It's too difficult. I'll start off on level 1 where this thing's coming down really slow, right? And then I get that encouragement and that motivation. And that's how video games work. That's how millions of kids are like addicted to video games, because of that progression through easy. Oh my God, I'm amazing. Okay, next level, next level, next level. And I think in junior golf, it's got to be that way as well. There's nothing worse, I think, than listening to a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old kid after I say to them after a tournament, hey, how many greens and regulations did you hit? And the answer is like 2, right? Why is it 2? Because they're hitting 3-wood into every par 4, right? And hitting a 3-wood as a third shot into a par 5. And, there are even, studies that you see with this where I think a group of researchers went to Finland for ice hockey, and they made the adults play a 3 times bigger pitch, right? And I think they did this in football as well. And they got adults to play on a pitch that was like 3 times bigger. It's no fun. The amount of work you have to do to run, and it's just no fun. And so if you imagine kids that age, when they're looking at Ricky Fowler hitting pitching wedges into par 4s, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to instill in those 9-year-olds and those 10-year-olds that, hey, you can hit driver and you can hit 9-iron or pitching wedge, right?
True.
And you can make birdie and you can score. So if at that age they already feel like they can shoot under par, I think then, like a video game, it's easy to kind of move them up. So I always think it's like changing the levels of difficulty and then changing them as they go along, But that's my personal kind of view on trying to get juniors to shoot lower scores.
I think it's a great analogy that you use that. I think it's a great explanation, because I do a lot of times make my juniors who are like 15 years old, 16 years old, play from the ladies' tee, and let's say, let's go shoot 6 under par on 9 holes. It's just that it's not the distance. It's the ability to hit that shot at a certain in a real world. Like, if a 9-year-old kid is playing a 400-yard par 4, I mean, where's the fun in that? You're right. Where's the fun in that? He's never going to make par over there. It's going to be like a fluke chip in or something.
Yeah.
And then they'll blame, like, okay, the short game is poor. It's like Tiger Woods playing a 900-yard par 5. How many
exactly.
shots do you think Tiger Woods is going to get on that green? On that green, he hits his
Precisely.
driver about 300 yards.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe his three wood, maybe okay, off the deck driver maybe 280, 290, and off the deck to
Yeah.
driver again 290. He's
Yeah.
never going to reach that par five
No.
in three shots. So birdie
Not
is
at all.
done for him. You
Yeah.
know, and forget about eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, like distance is kind of like correlative, right? So,
Yeah.
as the juniors hit their growth spurts, they're going to hit the ball longer anyway. As much as I'd love to take credit for, oh, wow, he's added like 20 yards. No, it's just nature taking its course. His clubs are longer, he's bigger, he's moving faster. And then so you get there. But the amount of times I see people, or juniors especially, when they finally do hit under par, but this is like later, right? When they're like 15, 16, and they're like, oh my God, I shot 2 under on the front nine. Oh, what did you shoot on the back nine? Oh, 8 over. It's like they're just not comfortable in that environment of being under par. But if you condition kids at 8, 9, 10, 11, that, hey, you know what, it's normal, right? Then hopefully that kind of takes care of itself when they're older. They're not afraid to be 2 under par after 9. They're going to push for, oh yeah, I remember shooting 6. And it's just getting that confidence in that way.
So that's why running tours for juniors and setting up the yardages correct was part of my teaching program itself.
Yeah.
Because when I used to teach the kids, I saw that they went out over there and played a yardage which was totally unrealistic. So then they used to come back and they used to cry and and they get disappointed. And I'm like, dude, so something needs to be done. So since no one did it, so I just took that step of, maybe a decade back that, the juniors will play off certain yardages, which I think they're comfortable with. And suddenly I've got my results.
Yeah.
All the juniors who went low and under par maybe 10 years back, today are top golfers in their field, and they've done so well. But all the guys who were scrambling with 3 woods, like you said, and rescues to reach par 4s, really didn't make it in golf. They really didn't make it because they didn't ever get accustomed to the environment of shooting under par because they were never under par. So shooting 73, 74 was no good because in the world you got to shoot 62, 61,
Absolutely.
Maybe 59.
I think you're right. For the juniors that I coach that aren't the longest hitters, and then they're still at that young age, I'll always tell them, look, like I don't care what you shoot. Let's just say that anything above this yardage, right, isn't a par 4. It's a par 5 for you, and we'll make it our own little little par, right? So I don't care what you have on the scorecard. I have my scorecard, and you and I will see what that is, and then that way I can kind of offset the distance a little bit, and also I can kind of like help to kind of ease a little bit of the anxiety or the frustrations that this kid is going through, because it's no fun when especially when you look at ages, right? So like if you're born like in this month and then you're born later, it's like there's a huge kind of physical gap, isn't there? So someone who's small for their year obviously is going to have a hard time, aren't they, as a youngster, because they're not going to be able to hit it that far. And but with those kids, I kind of love getting more emphasis then into like their backup system, so their short games, their pitching matrices, getting them to be a little bit more kind of short game orientated, because then they, you kind of have room then to work on the other stuff as they get bigger.
That's a good strategy. That's a very well planned strategy, and I think a lot of coaches should follow that example of actually figuring out when the kid is born, and which tour they play, so they also know at what age group they switch over, so they know exactly what they should work on more, because they're going to suffer from a certain yardage if the yardage system is faulty. Otherwise, if the yardage system is okay, then I think it's all good. Okay, we'll take another question. I think this is from Pune itself. At what age juniors should be focusing on physical fitness? I think that's more like physical instructor, but if you want to answer that question, go ahead.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I never really recommend people to see fitness professionals at a young age, because I don't want them early specializing in certain sports, right? So I always take the approach of like multifaceted sports. You want to try and create like, not only do you want to create like an all-round human being, but also you want to create an all-round sportsman. So I always suggest to parents, like, look, they should play probably at least 3 sports, and so some of my juniors, they're great cricket players. They love playing basketball, and they have all these things all gelled in. And I think, when you look at some of the skill sets attributed to like swimming, or some of the skill sets and physical traits that you need for like basketball, you can kind of find the crossovers anyway into golf, whether it's basketball, explosion. Right. So you have all the functional stuff in there. And also at the same time, they're going to be doing it and having fun, right? Whereas, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they've got fitness trainers, it's like a little bit of a bore. Not disregarding the fitness trainers in there, but I'm just saying, like, maybe you should just let them play golf, let them play other sports, and everything kind of takes it in. But listen, I've got nothing against it, but I prefer to see juniors kind of doing fitness as a fun thing. And generally speaking, I'd like it to be more of a team sport, so they get that social interaction, which maybe golf doesn't provide as much of, so that team kind of building.
That's why even you're right, because I like an 8-year-old kid once asked me, the parent asked me, so which physical fitness camp should I send him to? So I'm like, no. You send him to like tennis. Does he enjoy tennis? You let him play tennis. You let him play basketball. You let him swim. Stuff like that will anyways develop that human body into the basic, to give them the basic functional sport skills, which is the best thing. It's like what we were having a discussion with a physical fitness instructor from Calcutta yesterday, Ronodeep, and we agreed, let them play basketball, let them do martial arts. I mean, those are things that will develop them anyways. Yeah, that's the best thing. Yeah. Okay, coming to our next question, which is distance versus accuracy. Which one is more important and how?
God, I think distance is definitely where the game is gearing, right? Distance is definitely, if you want to make it that top level, I just think it's one of those things, it's like, not all the time, right? Because you have certain outliers on the European tour, for instance, like, Soren Kjeldsen has done tremendously well, not being a very long hitter. Look at SSP as well, even though he's not actually as short as you think. Actually, he still hits it 20 yards past me.
280, 290, yeah, that's right.
280, yeah, exactly, yeah. 40 yards past me then. So I think distance is definitely a must. I'll probably take what TPI has probably said about it. It's probably easier to teach people accuracy after a certain age, right? But it's better to let them swing hard and fast and develop that speed at an early age, and then you can always give them accuracy later. So I'm always, whenever I see students, especially younger students, I'm always trying to see them as like very ballistic, especially with driver. I'm trying to think, how can we get more distance with this driver? How can we use their pivots and their bodies better? How can we use the club face better to get, maximum run out, maximum use of their body, right? So some of my students, I love it when they jump, especially at like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I love it, like if Avni is out there. Yeah, she uses the shear forces really well, and her vertical jumps amazing. And you look at, how she jumps through the ball, it's unbelievable, and she hits it pound for pound long. And so, I think once you reach that certain level, then I think accuracy does become more important. But also, I've learned hard ways as well that, we take Chica, for example, we added like 25 to 30 yards to his driving. So, and we worked on his, on his pressure shift and how he would kickstart it. And, he jumped up by like 7 miles an hour and, was getting amazing carry distances. But then when you think about that, like the distance that he got, it then put more pressure on his wedges and his short game, which he's amazing at.
Yeah, that's right.
So in my head, we're like, okay, right, if we can improve Chica's distance because he wants to, win on the European tour, if we improve his distance, then we play into the hands of his wedges and his putter, which is amazing, right? It's like world class. But obviously there's a give and take. So the more time you spend on that pressure shift, it starts to leak into kind of the other stuff, right? The short game.
That's right.
You know, so you got to manage it well, and also you spend a lot of time doing that move and hitting drivers. So you know, there's always a balance, and that's something that we always, you know, that I obviously think about now is like, oh my God, yeah, you know, there's always a repercussion, right? So if you want to get more accuracy, you're probably going to hit it shorter, you know, because we're going to have to kind of like tone down certain things. We're going to have to tone down kind of how your hips work, the acceleration and deceleration of your hips and shoulders, and that might affect your distance and your ability to create club head speed. So there's always a trade-off with that. But for sure, juniors, I'd always go distance. You know, I'd always be on distance side.
Well, to agree with you, and I couldn't agree with you more on the distance factor, is because if you see the top 5 in the world, none of them hit it short.
Yeah.
And at that speed, trust me, their club faces are not more than 1 or half a degree open or shut because they hit it damn straight. You know, they're not missing fairways because they're actually gaining with the fairways. If they start losing on losing strokes on the driver, then they're not going to be on the top 5 in the world. So distance and accuracy, I think, also are hand in hand, because at that speed, you've got to be very, very accurate as well. You know?
Absolutely.
And they are. Dustin Johnson really doesn't spray it all over the place, nor does Bruce Koepka. And if they were spraying, they wouldn't be up there on the leaderboard every time. So distance definitely should be something that you work on, and accuracy will anyways be worked on, because accuracy is something which is a matter of club face control and stuff like that, which will happen. But if you don't work on the distance, like you said, from an early age, you might never become that jet fighter. You know, you'll always be a helicopter. You know what I'm saying?
I'm that classic example. You know, I'm that classic example, because if I hit it offline playing on that grass course, you know, you got rocks this big, and if you got these brand new Mizuno blades, you don't want to be there. So I was always a patter. You know, not much distance, not much dynamics, and it's really hard now. Because, you know, I have 15-year-olds who are now flying it past me. It's always hard, and I'm trying to work on speed, and it's very difficult. So I'm a testament to that TPI philosophy.
Right. We're gonna go through all the questions that are there, but the only thing is, in 3 to 4 minutes, we might just get cut off. We just have to rejoin the session.
Sure.
So I'll just reactivate the live session, and we can again join in everyone, and we'll wait for 5 minutes till they join in to. And all the guys whose questions I haven't come to, you can repost that questions again once the new session goes on, so that we'll still answer your questions. We won't let everybody leave over here, because we don't get Lawrence all the time free, because I know he's booked out for 3 to 4 months in advance. So all the questions that you want, you can get it at this time, and it's great to have Lawrence. I'll just there's another guy who wants to have a chat with you. He wants a 3-way. My God. I mean, Romit, this guy is really good. Romit, this guy is really good. We should all do a joint talk, all 3 of us. That's Tarun Sardesai.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Tarun. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you go. So we're gonna definitely work on that. We'll tell Instagram also to allow us to do a 3-way. but
I'll tell my wife first. I'll let my wife know.
All right. So now Danish Verma is asking a question. He's from a place called Ludhiana, and for a 9-year-old kid, coaching routine, what is the coaching routine in a month? Like, how many lessons do you really require for competitive golf?
Oh my, that's a great question. I don't think I can answer that within like 3 minutes. I think
we can take that up. You know, I think we're going to get cut off in about another minute. So what I'll do is I'll just end this session right now and redo that. But all the guys, I think Pooja, you have a question, and Manan, you have a question. Kurush,